Hello everyone, and welcome to this video walkthrough for the Worldcat Search API Parser. My name's Jeremiah. I'm the Systems Librarian at Eastern Oregon University, and I'm the one who wrote this program in response to a large number of gift books that we were given. And the idea behind it was to have a script or some software that we could run using a CSV that lists a bunch of ISBNs, and then it would spit out another CSV that has things like title and author and a number of other things that we'll get into. My goal with this video is just to give an overview of the software itself, how to install it and how to use it. I thought perhaps it would be easier to give all of the significant information through this video rather than just through the README. The README is very basic, and I just want to be sure I cover everything on how to use this particular software. So with that, let's jump into it. So we're going to start by opening up a browser, and we're going to want to go to github.com. And from here we want to go to the search box, and we're going to search for Worldcat Search API Parser. And this should give us the result that we're after. So here the EOU lib Worldcat API parser. So we're going to click on that to get to the repository. And there's not a whole lot here. We've got a README that gives an overview and some instructions on how to use it. We're going to go through this README so that just in case I've missed anything here, or just to clarify some things, we can clear that up with this video. So we'll start by going to this overview here. So the video walkthrough isn't done yet. That's what we're doing right now. I'll post that as soon as I'm done with this video. But we'll start with this description here. So this program imports a CSV file with a column of ISBNs and exports a new CSV file with columns containing the following data pulled from the Worldcat Search API. So what's going to happen here is we here at Eastern Oregon University received some gift books, and what we did was we just created a CSV with a header called ISBN, and then we scanned all of the ISBN numbers for those gift books into the CSV, at which point we could use that to import into the program, and then the program would take each ISBN, make an API call to the Worldcat search, and then grab the title, author, and publisher and everything that you see here and output it to another CSV file. So this script really saved us hours and hours of work that we would otherwise have to search each ISBN manually and then enter the title and author and publisher and all of that into a new CSV file. So with this program, that takes out the necessity of doing this manually. It's going to create a CSV in minutes as opposed to hours or days. So there are some requirements that you may or may not need to set up. The first is a reliable internet connection. Because this is making a number of API calls, we're going to need an internet connection to make the request and to get the response. So this won't work on a machine that doesn't have internet access. You're also going to need an OCLC membership, and really the reason for that is you need an OCLC library code or symbol. I think they actually call it a symbol. I probably should have called it symbol rather than code, but I'm going to use that interchangeably within this video. So I guess first what we want to do is, if you don't have a membership, I have a link here so that you can go and kind of learn what you need to do in order to become an OCLC member. I think for the most part, most libraries are going to already be a member, particularly if you're an academic institution. But just know that if you're not an OCLC member, you're not going to be able to use this software. So I'm just going to go back, and the next thing here for the requirements is an OCLC library code. So once you become a member, you're going to be given a symbol. I'm just going to go ahead and click on this link, and if you're unsure of what your symbol or code is, you can find that here. You could just search your own institution. I'm going to use Eastern Oregon University, and I'll hit enter. and scroll up here, and I see that my symbol is EOS. So we're going to use this in the software. You definitely want to take note of what your symbol is if you've come here and done a search. We're going to need that a little bit later. So I'm going to go back. And the last thing that you're absolutely going to need is going to be a Worldcat Search API key. I'm going to go ahead and click on this link. And from this page, we can get some information. I do need to point out that version 2.0 will not work with this. I feel like it's still a little bit in the development stage. At some point, when things become a little bit more solid with that, I think I'll update the software so that it will allow for version 2. Really, the big difference between the two, well, from the back-end perspective, is version 1 will give you a response in XML, whereas version 2 will give you a response in JSON. And JSON's a lot easier to deal with and parse, but in this case we're going with the XML version 1 simply because that was really the best I could do at this point. So you can find out more information by clicking on the FAQ. You can learn a little bit more about the differences between the versions here. But the thing that you're really going to be interested in here is this request a key. And I guess the way that I did this, so if you click on the link, you're actually brought to a search box. And so here I would search out my institution. But it's not going to work. If you're doing this for the first time and for the sake of this video, really I think what you need to do is send an email request to OCLC support. And I guess rather than putting in our institution name, I'm just going to go ahead and paste the email address of OCLC support. So it's support@oclc.org. And I guess maybe we'll just make things a little bigger. Okay, we're going to go back to the repository. And the next part under this requirements section is really only necessary if you're running this as a script. And frankly, running this as a script is probably the best approach to this. I've also created a Windows installer, but the nice thing about the script is when you run this from the command line, whether it's Windows or Linux or Mac, when you run it from the command line, you're going to get some information. This piece of software, I mean, really it's a script with a graphical user interface put over it, written in Python. And when you run this as a script, the terminal's going to give you some information that you wouldn't get if you're just running it using the Windows installer. So you'll get better error messaging if you run it as a script. You can just look in the console and it'll kind of tell you where things are at. So that way, if it's spinning much longer than you think it should, if it's processing things longer than you think it should, you can get some answers as to whether it's still processing or whether it has encountered an error and it's just kind of running through a while loop. So if you are running as a script, which is the recommended way, you're going to have to install some software dependencies for this program. Now, even though I feel like this is the preferred way of running things, I did include the Windows installer just in case there's people out there that really don't want to deal with that or they're too intimidated to use it. I wanted to make sure that this piece of software is usable by anyone. So, with that in mind, I do want to point out that we need certain dependencies in order for this program to run. So starting with Python 3, you're going to need that installed, and I put a link to the Python website and you can download things there. Now there's a download for Linux and Mac as well. I think with Linux, if you're using an Ubuntu or a Debian distribution like Ubuntu or Mint or whatever, you could just use the apt repository. It exists in the apt repository, and that's just simply sudo apt install Python 3. And I think that's all you need to do. But that's something that you can find online if you have any questions about it. You could just do a Google search for install Python 3 on whatever Linux distribution you're using, and you'll get some good instructions there. I don't think it's necessarily a great idea to download it and try to install it, particularly if you're not used to Linux. Dealing with those deb files, I don't think is really a beginner sort of task. So So just do a Google search for whatever distribution you're using, and you'll find an easier way of installing it rather than downloading it from the website. So we're going to go back to the repository, and the next thing you're going to need is pip. And I forget what that stands for, but it will allow you to kind of install certain Python libraries. Close that. But it does give instructions for Windows, Linux, and Mac. They're pretty easy to follow. So I would just follow the instructions that you find on this page depending on what operating system you're using. We'll go back to the repository. Okay, so the next dependency is Tkinter, and really what that is a library that allowed for the graphical user interface. It's what is behind what you're seeing here in this screenshot. So you're going to need that installed in order for this to run. And for each operating system, I have a link here. So Windows Tkinter is already installed automatically when you install Python 3. So if you're on Windows, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about this. Linux, it is a simple command to the apt repository to install Python 3-tk, and that will install Tkinter for you. I've not tested anything out on Mac, to be quite honest. I figure being a Unix-based system, it's going to be similar to Linux. But I did put a link to something that looked promising in terms of how you would go about installing Tkinter on a Mac operating system. And then finally we have pandas, which can be installed using pip. And the nice thing about pip is once you have that installed on Windows or Linux or Mac, it's always going to be the same command. So this command here is going to work on all three operating systems, and it's just pip3 install pandas. Okay, so I'm going to kind of skip over this how to use because we're going to get into that right after I show you how to go about installing this and how to get it to run. So we're going to skip here to the installation section. So I think I'll start with the Windows installer just to make things easier. This way, if people aren't interested in running as a script, they can just get the information now and move on. So we'll start with the Windows installer, and then I'll show how to run this as a script using Windows. The commands are a little different if you're running it as a script between Linux and Mac, but I have those commands down here for both Windows and Mac, and we'll look at that a little bit later. So first, let's go to the Windows installer. And that's actually at the top of the repository here. So you'll see this Worldcat Search API Parser _ Windows, and then it has some information appended to that. It's the version number and all that. So I'm just going to click on this link. And then from here, we can download the actual installer using the ellipsis here. I'm just going to click on that, and we have an option for downloading. I think you could also use this here. Yeah, let's just go ahead and use this. Okay, so once that's downloaded, I guess what I'm going to do is just move it to my desktop. Sorry about that. I should minimize that. And so I have the installer. It's got this weird little logo. I just threw that together. I wanted something there and didn't want to spend a ton of time on it, so we got this kind of silly little icon here. We can go ahead and click on that, double click it. And so we're getting a security warning. It's an unknown publisher. I wasn't quite sure how to set that up when I did the installer. So this is another reason why it might be a good idea to run it as a script as opposed to the Windows installer. As the one who wrote this software, I know full well that there is nothing here nefarious. So I'm going to go ahead and click Run. And so our installer window will show up here, and in order to proceed, we need to click on the accept the agreement. So it's an MIT license. Once you have the software, you can do whatever you want with it. Attribution is cool, but if you don't want to, that's okay too. So you want to go ahead and click the accept agreement and click next. And in my case, I do want to create a desktop shortcut just to make it easier to get to the software. I'm going to click on next. And so we get a review of the installation settings that we just configured. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit install. And I'm going to go ahead and we can see that the Worldcat API parser has now been installed, and there's the shortcut on the desktop. So we can launch Worldcat API or the Search API parser just by keeping that box checked. So I'm going to go ahead and do finish. Okay, so now we have the program in front of us, and we're going to go through each one of these fields, and I'm going to give you examples of what you're supposed to put in there. So we're going to start with the OCLC API key. Now, when you create your API key through OCLC, you're going to get some information that goes along with that API key. But they don't really label anything key. Instead, you need to make sure that you're using your client ID for this part right here. And the client ID is going to look something similar to this. This is not an actual key. I'm going to have to blur out the real one. It's going to look something like this. So it's pretty long. Not sure how many characters are there, but it's just a bunch of numbers and uppercase and lowercase letters. And that's what your key is going to look like. And again, they're going to call it client ID and not API key. So just be sure that you use the actual key. I think they also have like another, there's another identifier. I can't remember what it was, but it's much shorter. So just make sure you're using the client ID. Okay, so one thing that you can do is you can choose to remember the key. If you check this box and keep this key in here, the system's going to remember that. So really what this is doing is it's just once you install this program, it creates a SQLite database. So there's going to be a database file associated with this in the program files wherever you installed it. And that database will store this key as long as you have the remember key checked. Same deal with the OCLC institutional code. And again, remember when we did the search for Eastern Oregon University, and I found out our symbol is EOS. I can put that in there. Frankly, you could use any OCLC symbol here for any institution. It's going to return whether that institution has things or not. But I don't, really don't care what other institutions have when I'm looking at gift books. I really want to know if we own it. So I'm using the Eastern Oregon University symbol. I can click remember code. Now there is a little bit of error catching here. So for example, if I tried to submit things now, I should get a warning. All fields are required. Click OK and complete the blank fields. So .csv there. So there's little bugs like that. So the .csv is going to show up in there if it's left blank. But this is in beta version, so there might be little things like that. And certainly, if people encounter those, I would like to hear about them so that I can fix them. Okay, so to give a demonstration of this in action, if I just go ahead and click close, and then do you wish to close the program? And so basically what this is going to allow the program to do is actually save this key and this code to the SQLite database. If I click yes, if I click no, it'll just ignore everything and we can continue. But we'll go ahead and click yes, and then I'm just going to open it up again so that we see that everything was saved there. Okay, so the next field, we need to find the import file. And I guess before I go and put that entry in here, I just want to look quickly here to show you what the input file should look like. So I just have some things set up here for this video, and I have this input folder, and I'm going to open up this, and you'll see that there's a few columns here because initially these are the things we were going to populate, and we thought this was just the way we were going to do it manually, but we're not. So this program is going to ignore every column except for a column that has the header of ISBN. Now this doesn't have to be capital. It could be all lowercase. It could be a mix between the two. It should work regardless of what it is, but it does need to be ISBN. You'll also notice that these numbers here are showing up in scientific notation. This is a Windows Excel thing. Not sure how to get around that. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because these will be read by the program as a standard 13-digit ISBN number. If it's not a 13-digit number, as you'll see here, it's going to show up the way it should be. But just know that even though it's in scientific notation, it's still going to work. Okay, so the point is you need a column of ISBNs in order for this program to work, and this is going to be the file that I input. And I'm just going to scroll down. You'll see that we have 267 entries in this, so we should have an output of 267 columns in our output file. I'm going to go ahead and close this. Don't need to save. Okay, we'll minimize that. Okay, so back to the program, find the file, and just going to go to my input file here, put that in. Okay, the next is to select the directory to export to. So the CSV that's created that has the title and author and all that other information, we need to select a directory to output that to. So I'm going to click on select directory, and I'm going to go into this output folder here, just select folder. And the last thing I'm going to do is just put in the name of the file. So we'll do test. I'll just put one there. I could put .csv. It's going to save as a CSV no matter what. It's going to automatically append it with the .csv extension, so everything would be good there. Alright, so before I do this, what I need to do is enter a key that will work, and I'm just going to blur everything out after this point. So put my key in there. Okay, and so now we should be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and click submit, and we'll get this little processing bar here. Now we have, what was it, 267 or so entries. It takes about a second for each one of those ISBNs to process. It could take a little longer in some instances, but for the most part it should take about a second. So 267 seconds is probably somewhere around 4 minutes, or a little under 5 minutes actually, I guess. So if this thing goes on for more than 5 minutes, yeah, there might be, it might be something wrong. And this is why I kind of suggest you should use the script as opposed to the Windows installer, because the terminal is going to output any problems that this encounters. And I apparently didn't set things up to kind of do a try and catch error issue for this particular part. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just pause the video while this processes. We've got a few minutes to wait, so I will resume things once this is done processing. Okay, so here's a good example of why I recommend using this more as a script than with the Windows installer. I put in the wrong key here again. So basically this was a test key that I had initially, and a test key isn't going to work very well with this. You actually need a full production API key in order for this to work, because what happens is you send too many API requests to Worldcat, and it sees that it's just kind of a sandbox sort of key where you can make one or two API calls, and that's good. But when you start doing hundreds of them, it kind of gets weird. So there's nothing in the program to catch that sort of error. So what we're going to need to do is actually go ahead and close this, and I'm going to reopen it. Okay, so this key is still here, and this is the bad one. And actually, I'm going to do a little example here. I'm going to do the find file again. Go to input. Okay, select my directory. All the same thing. Output. Okay, and I'm going to do test 2 because I think actually a CSV was created. It probably has a few items in it. Okay, so just as an example, it will look for bad API keys, or API keys that don't actually exist. So if I do submit now, API key is invalid. So I had a valid one. It was just kind of a sandbox API key, and it just kind of spun forever. So very important, make sure you use a production key. It actually takes a few days for that to get approved when you make the request. So anything that you make on the spot as you go in there will work for maybe a spreadsheet that has 3 API or 3 ISBNs. In any case, I'm just going to click OK here. I'm going to take this out. And now what I'm going to do is put the actual API key in, so our production one. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to blur that out because this is our production API and I can't really share that. So I'll paste that in there. Now I'm going to hit submit and it should be, a couple minutes, maybe 3 minutes with the 267 ISBNs. That's about what it was the last time I timed it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. And everything is processing now. I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to restart once everything's done processing. Okay, so after a few minutes, we get the processing complete message. It gives us the total number of records that were processed. So what we can do now is let's just take a look at that file. And I saved that in this output folder here, and we called it test2. I'll go ahead and click on that. And we should have 268 rows. Oh, I see. Yeah, they skip some rows between each ISBN, so that seems about right. So basically double the number there. In any case, I don't know why Excel does that. I don't have this problem with open source CSV readers. I'm just gonna clean this up a little bit so it's easier to look at. And we'll look at each column. Okay, so the very first column, the record status, lets us know whether or not the bibliographic information is available through the Worldcat API. Every once in a while you're going to find one that isn't, and in that case you're just going to get a little message saying not found in Worldcat, and then all the rest of the fields are going to be left blank. So title, that is always available. So you'll have all of the titles listed there if the bib info is available. Same with author. It will also include editors. I think occasionally you may find a book or two that don't actually have the author listed, although I'm not seeing any there right now. So very likely you're going to get author information. More often than not, you're also going to get the publisher information, the year it was published, and so this is going to look specifically at that ISBN's publish date. So, an ISBN might have, a book might have a number of ISBNs. The one that's associated with this particular one will get you the year that certain edition was published. Sometimes you can get edition information, so we have the editions of the book listed here. Next we have price. Now this one's a little more hit or miss, and what I did was with the program, sometimes the price seems a little weird to me, so I wanted to make sure we identified where that price came from. So the parser goes through the XML data, it gets the price, and then it identifies where that price came from. So if it looks a little bit off, you can go and check on that. Also, binding. Now, there's only a handful of books that are going to have this. The OCLC records don't always have the binding, but when they do, we put in the binding here so we know whether it's a paperback or if it's listed as acid-free, that could be hardcover or softcover. It's just it was printed on acid-free paper. And then finally, you get the held at institution. If it is not currently owned by your institution or whatever institutional symbol, OCLC symbol or code that you put into the program, it will look for that. And if it doesn't have that institutional holding, it's going to say no. And if it does, it's going to say yes. So this way you know whether or not we already own it, and maybe it's a title that's, well, I guess if we could keep a copy of that, but if we already have one, it's probably not worth keeping. So so we get that information. Okay, so I'm now going to close this. We don't need to save it. I'm going to go back to the program, and at this point I could run another one if I really wanted to. You'd be able to submit another request, and naturally, you're definitely going to want to change the import file unless you want the same data. But other than that, it's a fairly simple little program to use, and as I said, it's a little better to run it as a script simply because you get more information. So I'm going to demonstrate that now using Windows. It's going to work similarly with Linux or Mac. I think it would work with Mac. Honestly, I've not tested that, so I don't know that for sure, but I think it should work. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and we'll go back to our web browser. I'll just open that up a little. Okay, so we just did our download for the installer. I'm going to hit the back button. And we could also run it as a script. So you can also, I mean, you can view the code here. So you can have a look at that. I consider doing a code review for this. I don't know if people are interested in that. Leave a comment and maybe I'll do that. I can just go over what all of this is doing. But really, all I want right now is the script itself. And I guess I'm gonna go ahead and download the raw file. And then from there, I guess I think what I want to do is go to a different folder. So I'm just gonna click on that. I'm gonna do, maybe just go in here. I think I'm gonna create a new folder and just gonna call it video. Open that up and let's see now. Let's move that. Let's just minimize that. And drag my download into here. Okay. Open that up again. Let's make that bigger. Okay, so I need to get to this particular directory in order to run the API parser. What I'm going to do is actually copy this file path. So go ahead and copy that, and you're going to want to do the same. And the next thing you're going to want to do is open up a PowerShell. So open up your Windows PowerShell. Oh, and for those that aren't actually really familiar with how that works, you can just come to the type search here and type in PowerShell. I use it fairly often, so it shows up in the apps down there when I just click on the search. But this is what you're going to want. You don't need to run it as an administrator. I don't think. If you run into problems, then maybe you want to right click on it and then run as administrator, but I'm not going to do that because I've not run into problems before. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that. Whoops, accidentally closed it. Okay, so from here, what I need to do is change into this directory, and it's similar with Linux and Mac. It's kind of the same command. You can use cd, which is change directories, and then I'm just going to paste the path that I copied up here, and you can do the same, whether it's Windows or Linux or Mac. I'm going to go ahead, and one thing to take note of is if you are using Linux, these backward slashes aren't going to work. You want forward slashes. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. So I am now in the proper directory. I can use the ls command, which is just to list the contents of the directory to see what's there. And as we can see, we just have the Worldcat API parser.py. So this next command that I'm about to do is going to be different on Linux than it would be on Windows. So with Windows, we're going to want to run python.exe and then the name of the file. Oops, Worldcat. And so quickly, just if you're using Linux, instead of this python.exe, you're going to want to use just Python 3, and that'll do the same thing as what the executable Windows file will do. But I'm just going to change this back to exe. It's not going to work if you don't. And if I go ahead and hit enter, it's going to pop up our parser. Okay, so I guess what I want to do is actually let's use that API key that I had that was for a sandbox, and I can show you how you get more information when you're using the terminal. So I put in that wrong key, or the sandbox key, so that it will create some issues. And then I just put in my EOS for Eastern Oregon, And then let's see, we need a file to import. I'm going to use the same thing. Just go to input and then directory to save to. We'll go to the output. So we'll select that folder. And then I'm just going to call this, I think we've done test 1 and test 2. Let's do test 3. And I'll go ahead and submit. And we get this forbidden message this time around, and I'm not sure why. It might be because I've used this API key a number of times, and now they're saying, oh, some weird traffic is coming from this API key. I think we're going to block it. So I think that's probably what's happening there. However, when you're running this program, and I can't give an example now because I'm not sure how else to break it, you are going to get all kinds of information here if things start to break. And I don't know, maybe trying it again. Yeah, so I tried it again, and you see here we have we're getting all sorts of problems. So we get the HTTP error. I'm not sure what error was being picked up for the forbidden, but I mean it's the exact same thing. So this was just more to illustrate that your terminal is going to have a lot more information, and if you hit something like this, a 403 forbidden error, it's going to stop and it's just going to spin. And I'm going to need to address that in future releases of this. But in the meantime, it works the way it should. As long as you have a good API key. There's not many other rules to follow there. If I go ahead and close it, I mean, I've already demonstrated that if you have a field that is empty, you're going to get a message. There's a couple other error messages that might pop up. So for instance, if you have a spreadsheet or a CSV that has no ISBN column in it, with an ISBN header, you're going to get an error for that. And really what it's going to do is just remove all of the information here. So the file directory, it'll remove that, and then it'll just tell you you need to actually import a file that has a header of ISBN, just as an example. So as of now, I think really the big one is if you use a sandbox environment sort of API key and not a production one that was actually reviewed by OCLC and accepted by OCLC and issued by OCLC, then you might run into this problem. Okay, let's go ahead and close this. And you'll see that the first time you run this program, it's going to create this app file. So this is an app, this is a DB file, it's a database file. It is your SQLite database information. This is where your API key is stored and your institutional symbol or code are kept if you check on the remember my key or my code boxes. Okay, let's see. I'm going to close that out. I don't think we need access to that anymore. So we've run through all of that. Let's see if there's anything else here that I should address within the README. We've done the installation. Run a script again. Right here, this is going to tell you how to get to the proper directory where the script is. So using CD. And actually, you know what? I think PowerShell might actually accept forward slashes. The nice thing, the reason why I like to use PowerShell is because I'm a Linux guy. Much rather use Linux than Windows. And PowerShell allows for many of the same commands that the Bash terminal allows for. So I like to use PowerShell. I think the command line terminal, the CMD terminal, if you're familiar with that, I don't think that's going to work the same. So I don't bother with that. Now also I show what commands to use here if you're using Windows. This is the one that we just used. And this is the one that I had pointed out that you want to use if you're using Linux and probably Mac too. I haven't tested it, so I don't know that for sure. Okay, so I think that covers it. Naturally, if there's any questions, you can contact me. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. If you find any bugs, I'm very happy to get that information as well so that I can fix things in subsequent releases for this. Ultimately, I hope you found this to be helpful in learning how to actually use this program and how to install it. Running as a script, it's really not an installation. It's just downloading the script and running it from the command line. So I want to thank you for watching and hope to see you in subsequent videos. Thanks.